All right, it's just 2 minutes after the hour. Hi, everybody. It's Fred Jacapps from Jacapps Media. I'm here with Bob Kernan from jacapps. We hope you're doing well. We hope everybody's safe and getting through this craziness. We've got some great data to share with you this afternoon, and Bob Kernan is going to set you up here and talk about what this presentation is all about. So, Bob, if you're
Sure.
wherever you are, hello.
Hi. Thanks everyone for joining us for our webinar today. I'm Bob Kernan. I am the Chief Operating Officer of jacapps. For those of you who don't know us, we are the leading mobile app developer for radio. We've been in business for almost 12 years now and have around 650 stations all across the country that run our apps. In addition to our V4 platform apps, we also do completely custom development. Really happy to have Fred Jacapps with us today. Fred and his team at Jacapps Media have put together a great look at how the media landscape has evolved, especially since the arrival of the coronavirus. Fred is going to walk us through how consumer behavior is changing and what it means for radio and its audience, particularly how devices like smartphones, smart speakers, and connected cars are changing the landscape. To help you adjust to these changes, please stay until the end of the webinar, as we're going to be presenting a special offer from jacapps to hopefully really help you raise your digital game. So stick around for that. And if you have questions during the webinar, please put them in the question box, and we will answer each one individually via email after the webinar. So right now, I'm pleased to hand things over to the founder of Jacapps Media Strategies, Fred Jacapps.
Well, thank you, Bob, and hello again, everybody. Those of you who have worked with Jacapps Media in the past know that we are big believers in science and data as it impacts strategy and tactics. And that's become even more important in the past decade or so, because as I think the radio broadcasting industry has learned, we don't just compete against each other, we compete against everybody. And that means Spotify and Pandora, Sirius XM, even podcasts are all now part of the audio landscape. And so the big issue with our content is how can we make it attractive, attention-getting, and relevant. And so that's what a lot of people on the content side are slaving over, trying to make sure that our material cuts through. But today's presentation is not really about content, it is about distribution, because the reality is that you can have a great format, an incredible morning show, a very controversial personality, but if people are in a position where they don't have a device that can tune any of that in at any given moment in time, well, that's not going to work out so well. So a conversation about apps and connected cars and smart speakers and mobile is really a conversation about distribution. So to drill down into that, I'm going to actually show you data from two studies. Techsurvey, which is our big one among commercial radio stations, and it was done right before COVID-19 happened in January, February of this year. In retrospect, we lucked out and snuck it in. And then we've been doing some COVID surveys in early April and in mid-May. And I'm going to show you some data from the most recent survey done right in the middle of May. And I think this will help set the tone and give you an idea of where we're headed here and why mobile is so important in this environment. So here's the methodology for Techsurvey. More than 500 stations across North America participated, generating north of 46,000 respondents. And as I mentioned before, the survey dates were pre-COVID, early January to early February. Now, here's the COVID-2 information. 98 stations participated, around 16,000 respondents. Again, these are commercial radio respondents, and the dates are mid-May, as you can see. So I'm going to actually start out with a few COVID slides, and then we'll move into Techsurvey. In both surveys, respondents tend to be members of radio station databases. Some stations also post a link on their websites or social media pages, but most of these people are in station databases. In Techsurvey, we actually do market level weighting. So for example, 400 surveys from Chicago, a big market, count for a lot more than 400 surveys from a smaller market like, say, Chattanooga. And here is the most important caveat here. Unlike a Gallup survey, which would be 1,000 people in tab, all shaped to match the population based on gender, age, ethnicity, that's not what this is. This is a study of core commercial radio listeners. These people are drinking the Kool-Aid. They are into radio. These are the people in the 80-20 equation. This is the 20 that actually generate about 80% of the ratings. So how they feel at any given moment in time, really important. So let's start out with our COVID-2 survey. This goes back to mid-May. And one of the big questions as it relates to how radio ratings are going to end up working is, where are people's locations when it comes to their workspace? Because in radio, we've gotten accustomed, of course, over the decades to speak to people in the workplace, encouraging them to turn on the radio all day. But if they're not in their traditional workplace or work site, where are they? So what you're looking at here is actually our 3 COVID surveys. I wanted to actually show you the contrast. Commercial radio on the left, public radio in the middle, and Christian music radio on the right. Let me draw your attention on the commercial radio pie to that brown slice there, the biggest one. That's 46% of the overall commercial radio audience now working outside the home. So they're still going to some kind of workplace. But when we look at the green and the purple slices, and I'm moving my cursor over here, you can see more than half the sample are working from home or a mashup of working from home and working outside the home. So this is a lot different than it would look like normally, right? If there was not a global pandemic going on and everybody was sequestered in their homes, we've got a lot of people now working remotely. And so we wanted to find out, looking down the road, not just the present, but what would be the likelihood that a lot of these folks who are still working and working from home are going to continue to do that. So take a look at this pie chart here, because we asked people to kind of give us an idea of what the future might look like once the virus is in the rearview mirror. And look at that pinkish slice up there, upper right. That's more than 1/3 of the sample that are telling us that after the virus, they prefer to work remotely, to work from home. The green slice there, about 1/5 of these folks are people who were working from home before there was the coronavirus. And then we've got that smaller gold slice, 7% of people who are pretty sure that their employer will want them to work from home after the virus is hopefully a thing of the past. So that's a lot of folks there, 6 of every 10, who believe that they will be working from home or certainly want to be. So obviously that's got implications on radio listening, because location clearly matters. So we wanted to find out in our COVID-19 study, how have people's media habits changed since perhaps they've been in these new locations, working from home, homeschooling. Again, everybody's lives have been turned upside down. So we gave them a list of media platforms, and we asked them to tell us, since coronavirus, have you been using these platforms more or less or about the same as you did before? Now, here's why this is really important. Remember, these are core radio listeners now, right? I mean, we talked about that before. These are people in your database, but as you can see here, whether you're looking at commercial radio, public radio, or Christian music radio, more than 1/5 in all 3 samples do not have a working radio where they live. So obviously that's going to have an impact on the media that they use. That's a significant portion of core radio listeners who don't have a radio where they reside. So now when we look at the media that they've been using since COVID-19 broke out, go all the way to the top, And that green line there, the big one, 48% of our samples say that since COVID-19 broke out, they've been spending more time with video streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime. That probably shakes out very closely with your own experience. And notice that only 1% have been spending less time. So we take 1 from 48, and we have a net positive over there on the far right where my cursor is of 47%. So yeah, this has been a really good time for Netflix. Right below, lots of people are browsing the internet, as you can see, 39% up, 3% down. And then we come to radio listening, specifically the home station, the station that sent respondents the survey. And this is really positive, especially given that context I gave you on the previous chart that shows that a significant portion of core radio listeners don't have a radio where they live. In spite of that, 26% say they've been listening to more radio against 15% less. So that's a net positive of 11%. And that really is a good thing. And we're going to get in a moment to how they are actually listening to their favorite radio stations. But as you can see, as you work down the hierarchy here, lots of social media going on. People are using streaming services like Spotify and Pandora. There's a pretty fair amount of TV viewing going on as well. When I said to you earlier that we compete against everybody, you can really see that borne out on this chart. But the question is, how are they actually listening to their favorite radio stations? What devices, what gadgets, what platforms are they using? So we gave them a list and we asked them to tell us which are the ones that you are actually using a lot. So way up on top, you can see that coronavirus or not, lockdown or not, a lot of people are still spending time in a car. Now remember, we know that people are still going to work, not everybody, but people are still commuting to work. And then again, remember, even people who are at home are very likely going out and doing grocery shopping, running errands. And again, this is in mid-May, so things were beginning to loosen up a bit. So 47% say they have been listening a lot to their favorite radio station in their car. Now, normally, if there was not a global pandemic going on, that percentage would very likely run well into the 50s. So it is suppressed. You can see number 2 are people listening to their favorite radio station a lot on a regular radio at home. A lot of people have one, right? So, but again, 27% is not a particularly high percentage for people who are spending an inordinate amount of time at home. But then in red, you can see where streaming has kicked in for broadcast radio stations. 24% say they have been listening to the stream on the station website on a lot of devices. 21% have been listening to the stream on their station's own mobile app. One rung below that, streaming on a voice command smart speaker. We're going to talk about them. And then finally, at 13%, streaming on a aggregator app like iHeart or radio.com. But I've asterisked where streaming has really played an important role in broadcast radio staying in the game, even though people are at home, and you can definitely see the impact of that. So let's now move into Techsurvey and break this down. And we're going to start with mobile phones and apps, and then we'll move into smart speakers and the car. But what you're looking at here across the last 4 tech surveys, 2017, 18, 19, and this year's in 2020, is the percent of all of our respondents who ever spend any time at all listening to their favorite radio station via its mobile app. So you can see it tends to be ticking up with each passing year, but when we actually look at the demographic array for this, we see a few different things. Men are more likely to stream their favorite radio station than are women. Millennials and Gen Xers also lead the way. And then we're also seeing blacks stand out as well, streaming their favorite radio stations as well. But for the most part, there's a lot of consistent listening to a favorite radio station. on its mobile app. Up on top there is a 5-year trend of people who say they have downloaded any radio or music app. And obviously, radio and music are a big part of most people's menus, right? 7 of every 10 of those who have a smartphone or a tablet have downloaded a radio or music app. No gender story there, although it's obviously positive for both. But when we look at generations, check that out. The road to a consistently younger, up-and-coming audience is, in fact, mobile apps. Now, again, boomers look very, very solid at 63%, but you can definitely see how much a part of lifestyle mobile is for Gen Zs and millennials. What are the most popular radio or music apps? Well, we've got basically a 3-way tie for first there with YouTube, Pandora, and the home station app at 47%. So this gives you an idea. You know, I think back, as Bob said, to the 11 years that jacapps has been in business. We actually opened up the doors about 100 days after Apple opened its app store. And back then, the real thing was a lot of people didn't even know what an app was, much less that a radio station could have one and that it would stream its audio. And now when you look at these kinds of results, and remember, these are core radio fans, but that's what it's really about, right? You can see how robust downloading radio station apps have become. 47% this year, and off to the right there, you can see that's up 5 percentage points from the year before. And then when you move down the list, you can kind of see the hierarchy begin to kick in. So in order for people to download your app, they have to know that it exists in the first place. And so the question is, do you know whether your favorite station has a mobile app? And as you can see, the biggest slice on this pie is still 4 of every 10 people who really don't know. So put a pin in that because we're going to come back to that. But the real opportunity here is, in fact, the people in the blue shade, about a third, who are aware that, in fact, their favorite station has an app and they have downloaded it. Let's take a look at who they are and how they're trending. And the good news is they are trending higher. We'd love to see that 34% approach 50%, but at least it's heading in the right direction. And we definitely have a nice demographic consistency here. Men are a little bit higher than women, and you can see there are little bumps there for millennials and Gen Xers, but all things being equal, this really looks pretty good. Now, here's something really interesting. Let me direct your attention. This is the same data, except this group of bars down here at the bottom right indicate that there is a connection between people who download music and radio-oriented apps. And as you can see there, if people have downloaded the Apple Music app, the Amazon Music app, Pandora, Spotify, and so on, there's a greater likelihood that they have downloaded your app as well. So these are the people that you're talking to here. These are not just random consumers. These are active music users. They have all these other apps on their mobile devices. This is why it's so important that they, in fact, have yours. So this is very much an illustration, I think, of keeping up with the Joneses. And then something that we have learned over the years is that when a radio station goes to the trouble of actually developing its own mobile app, the audience tends to give them props for that. When we ask the overall sample who has downloaded their favorite station's mobile app, how they rate it, you can see the ratings are great. A majority give the highest scores, excellent, and a third give good scores. So there clearly is a return on investment here, not just in terms of listening, but overall brand image. So if you're a veteran of our studies, you've seen this before, and sadly, we didn't invent the Net Promoter Scoring system. This is something that came out of Harvard, but essentially it is a recommendation score. When you stay in a hotel, if you ever do that again, you know they follow up with an email asking you, would you recommend the Courtyard by Marriott in Cleveland to a friend, family member, or coworker? And so we asked the same question about our radio stations in Techsurvey. And you can see the scale. The way the question goes is on a scale of 0 to 10, where 10 means extremely likely and 0 means not at all likely. How likely are you to recommend the station that sent you the survey to a friend, family member, or colleague? And it's a very high bar. In order to be considered a promoter, as you can see there, you have to give the radio station a 9 or a 10. Detractors are 0s through 6s. And then if you look at the bottom, you can see the formula. You take your promoters, your 9s and 10s, you subtract the detractors, the 0s through 6s, and you come up with a net promoter score. So we track this in every study we do. It is a great way to understand brand strength and, again, word of mouth. So here it is for all the different formats, and I've put an arrow there on the average score for Techsurvey 2020. It's 43, and that's fairly consistent with where we've been over the past 15, 16 years. Now, formats to the right struggle a little bit more with net promoter scores, although all of these tend to be right up around 40, with a couple of exceptions near the end. News talk listeners and alternative P1s tend to be pretty finicky. When we head left, higher scores, you can see there's a lot of traditional radio formats there, but when you look all the way to the left at that huge, big green bar, that's Christian music radio there. They absolutely win best in show when it comes to net promoter, and a competitive number 2 is public radio. Just want to show you that so you can kind of get an idea of how net promoter score works. Now, this time around with commercial radio, you can see that rock was the leader, followed by country, CHR, rhythmic urban, hot AC, and urban AC, all performing above average. So the question that I get asked a lot is, how do I drive our net promoter score up? What are the things that we can do as a radio station that would actually instill more loyalty, generate word of mouth, and get that net promoter score up a lot higher than everybody else that we compete against? And so what we did here was we dug into the data and looked around at higher than average net promoter score groupings to see who these people were. And what's fascinating is that when you look right up on top of the ones that we selected here, you can see that people who love their favorite station's app average out a net promoter score that's almost double the average there, from 43 to 82. For people who listen to their favorite station stream more than any other place on their mobile app, we have a net promoter score of 70, way above that 43 norm. And then even moving down the list, just folks who have downloaded the app, listen to their favorite station on a smart speaker the most, listen more to broadcast radio since getting a smart speaker, listen to the station stream on the website. I mean, all of those are above average, which continues to message to us that when you make your radio station's content available on a wide variety of platforms, they reward you, not just with quarter hours, but with respect and brand equity. But notice again how up near the top, we have the appy, as we call them, characteristics. People who love your app, stream on your app the most. Those are really important distinctions to make. What are the most popular features on mobile apps? Well, this probably won't come as a surprise to many of you. It is about streaming. I mean, when we first got going with mobile apps, we knew that the Walkman was a thing of the past and that radio had indeed lost its portability. And so the smartphone afforded us that opportunity to make radio portable again, to be able to listen to the stream wherever we go. And you can see that is in fact a big reason why people download station apps to begin with, they want to be able to listen to the radio station on their phone. But there are some secondary uses here that are important. People picking up news stories or looking through the news feed, social media sharing, podcasts, video. Now, all of those are smaller numbers, but keep in mind that not every app offers those features. And what we have found at jacapps is that people may download an app in order to stream their favorite radio station, but oftentimes they discover other features on the app that become useful. And so as a result, what the app can end up doing is, in fact, opening up other content doors to the audience, which is really important. Let's dig a little bit deeper there and talk about permissions, because one of the other aspects of mobile app development is gaining permissions from regular consumers, regular listeners, to be able to do a variety of different things, like send them notifications or get access to their location or be able to get to their microphone or their camera. Now you can see the number one permission that a majority of our respondents who have downloaded a radio or music app tell us, yeah, I'm fine with this, is the ability to be able to send notifications. And this is critically important because this is an opportunity to be able to engage your audience, to drive more listening, to get them into a contest when it's going to play. Or again, in the case of information stations, whether sports or news, let them know that there's not going to be a major league season, or that in fact there is a new bill that has just been signed by Congress. I mean, those are the kinds of things that mobile app users want to know from their favorite station, and so push becomes a great engagement tool. And then there's this existential question: what are the best kind of apps for your favorite station to have? Is it an aggregated app that has a whole lot of radio stations that stream, or is it your favorite station having its own app that has a variety of different features besides streaming? And again, these are not primarily jacapps respondents here. This is just, again, 46,000 plus respondents from radio stations around the country, some of which have apps, some of which don't, but you can definitely see by a wide margin here, they prefer their favorite radio station having its own branded app, which was a bet that we made 11 years ago, and it's held up pretty well. Now, this is critically important as well, especially with the information that I showed you with our COVID-19 studies. But the question, as you can see up on top here, is how often do you listen to radio stations on a mobile device while you are working? And so this becomes critically important here because, as we know, the workspace is changing. You know, when we wrote this question and asked it back in January and February, there were people working remotely, but more people were in fact going into work or going to a construction site or going into an office or going into a hospital, whatever it may be. A lot of people are at home, but as you can see, they are still conditioned to listen to the radio station over the mobile app. In fact, 1 in 4 say they do it frequently, and a similar percentage do so occasionally. So again, this is part of the process of developing a mobile app, promoting it properly, not just how to use it, but where to use it, and how it can really come in handy and become a part of your content menu. All right, let's shift gears and talk about smart speakers and voice. And I've actually broken them up into 2 pieces because when people think about voice, they think about smart speakers, right? I mean, that's the hot new object, and the whole Alexa thing. It's a running joke. It's, do I want one? It's all of that. But the reality is that this whole platform isn't as much about smart speakers as it is, in fact, voice. So that's where we're going to jump into now. Now, here's the working radio at home from Techsurvey. Before I just showed it to you just with this year's data, but now I'm actually going back 5 years. And remember who these people are. These are core radio listeners. And as you can see, slowly but surely, we're down to about 8 of every 10 respondents who have a working radio at home. So it really is that 19% now that we've got to focus on. What's their story? And when we look at it demographically, the people who are least likely to have a working radio at home, those ugly red arrows tell you the story, right? It's the younger end of the audience. It tends to be teens and millennials least likely to have a radio at home. So that's why this whole question of how are they going to receive your radio station when they don't have a radio becomes important. And this is where voice commands kick in. Now on the left, we have Techsurvey 2019. On the right, this year's Techsurvey. And the question is, do you ever use voice commands on any device? And as you can see, it's growing. 7 of every 10 people now are getting used to barking out an order to an inanimate object or a device and expecting a result of one kind or another. What are the devices that they have actually used before? Well, this is a surprise to a lot of people. Most would suspect that, of course, it would be a smart speaker like an Amazon Echo or a Google Home. But the fact is, a majority of those who have ever used voice commands have used them on their phone, right? Siri was around long before there was Alexa. She has certainly been overshadowed by Alexa. That's a conversation for another time and another day. But a majority of respondents who have ever used voice before, in fact, have used voice on their smartphones. Smart speakers are a distant second, followed by cars. Interesting, right? People are already getting used to talking to their cars. And then right below that are those remotes, right? I have Comcast Xfinity, and that X1 remote is a pretty handy dandy little device where I can shout out The Sopranos and boom, it shows up. So this whole idea of using voice becomes really important. And look at the meteoric rise of smart speaker ownership. Starting in 2017, when only 1 in 10 had one of these devices, it is now tripled as of this year's Techsurvey. And when we look demographically, there are some bumps here. There are some peaks, especially with millennials, but overall, you can see that adoption of smart speakers has pretty much been consistent. Now, one of the other things we've learned is if you own one smart speaker, chances are really good you've bought a second one, or a third one, or a fourth one. I've got 3 of them in my home. I know a lot of you probably have multiple smart speakers in your home or residence as well. It becomes a convenience. And you can see there's a real pattern here with 56% of smart speaker owners now having more than one. What rooms of the house are they located in? Well, check it out. The top 3 rooms are the living room or family room, a bedroom or bedrooms, and the kitchen. Seems to me those are the same rooms where the radios used to be. But look at number 4, hovering below. People who already have one of these devices in their workspace at home, a den or an office. And in the COVID-19 world in which we live, where we are talking about more people working from home, you can definitely see the possibilities here. What are the most frequent use cases for smart speakers among core radio fans? Well, you can see the number 1 use case, 4 of every 10 have streamed music on a service like Pandora or Spotify. But then we have a 4-way tie for second place. People setting a timer, people getting a weather forecast, asking goofy questions, or listening to a broadcast radio station on one of these devices. So this is why a lot of people in radio are really excited about the smart speaker opportunity. They are in people's homes, including homes that don't have radios, and already listening to the radio is a significant use case. But they have to know that they can actually listen to your station on one of these devices. And that's where there's a bit of a lag here. See the question below the pie? Have you heard any AM/FM radio stations talking about or promoting smart speakers on the radio recently? Less than 4 of every 10 actually have. And I look at that as kind of a puny score here. We'd like to see that higher because people don't just innately know they can listen to a radio station on a smart speaker. Look all the way up on top, upper right there. Yeah, it's trending up, but ever so slowly. And overall awareness is nowhere as good as we would like it to be. So this is why Jacapps Media and JCapps clients probably get a little fatigued by us reminding them, cajoling them, beating them up to run more promos for their smart speakers. Here's an important question. How often do you listen to broadcast radio stations on your smart speaker? And you can see there a majority say they do so frequently or occasionally. So this is in fact becoming a habit. Not much of a gender story there, but clearly mirroring the overall composition of the radio audience. Smart speakers have actually become a more frequent way of the older generations to use radio when they are in a place where they have a smart speaker. This is not a bad piece of data here. This actually indicates that this is a technology that middle-agers and even seniors can figure out, in fact, how to use. And here's the big question here, the real ROI question. Does it actually impact listening to have a smart speaker? So that's the question below the pie here. How has your listening to broadcast radio stations changed since you got one of these devices? And I'm moving my cursor over to the 21% that say, I've been listening to a little more or a lot more AM FM radio. That's 21% versus 8% who say they're listening less. So that is in fact a net positive of 9%. And you can see when you look down the demographic groups here, there really is no story. Everybody actually is impacted similarly by having a smart speaker and listening to a favorite radio station. So this is a huge opportunity for radio, commercial radio, public radio, Christian radio. There are more quarter hours in these smart speakers. All right, let's move to the four-wheel medium, your car or your truck, and take a look at how that world has changed from the 2-knob and 6 preset device that used to be the only thing that was in a dashboard. First thing we learn is that almost 8 of every 10 people who spend any time in a car at all have figured out a way to be able to connect their phone to the vehicle. Now, in some cases, these are full-blown connected cars with systems like Ford Sync or Chrysler Uconnect, but in other cases, it's a simple Bluetooth connection, an aux-in jack, alligator clips, whatever it may be, but almost 8 of every 10 people now, and you can see it is trending steadily up, can connect their phone in their car. And that gives them access to a lot more content than a bunch of local radio stations. You can see that there clearly is a generational thing going on. The younger the listener, the greater the likelihood that they have figured this out. But look at the greatest generation down there at the bottom. These are people born in 1946 or earlier. 7 of every 10 of them have mastered the technology of pairing their phone or connecting their phone to the car. So this really becomes an important thing, especially when people are in the market for a new car. Now, back in January and February, pre-COVID-19, so who knows how it may change, 9% of the overall sample say they are planning to buy or lease a new vehicle in 2020. What are the most important features they have to have in their next vehicle? Well, the good news is that having an FM radio, as you can see, is number one. AM radio, not so much. Only 35% say that it's very important. But hey, with FM radio, a win is a win. Having said that, however, that 74% is the lowest that we have ever seen it. And conversely, when I highlight all the connectivity features here, like Bluetooth, the aux-in jack, voice commands, Wi-Fi, a whole media system, you name it, you can see how they have risen in importance. And in fact, Bluetooth and FM radio are, for all intents and purposes, tied for that first place position. So consumers are realizing that they can have a full dimension listening experience, media experience in their vehicles. And this is something that most people want. So when I said early on, when we first got going, that we compete against everybody, you can really see how that plays out in the vehicle, which is radio's #1 listening location. But they certainly love this idea of being able to access a lot of different content. Now, I highlighted a couple of features that are near the bottom there, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. These are still not high demand features yet in new vehicles, but it's important that we touch on them a bit. If you don't know what Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are, they are essentially dashboard ecosystems that have been developed by Apple and Android that essentially connect to your phone. So when you get in the car, you look at your dashboard and it mirrors the desktop, if you will, on your smartphone. The apps that are there, many of them end up showing up on your dashboard. And you know what goes away? The radio. So one of the things that we started working on with at jacapps a few years ago, when both Apple and Google came up with these ecosystems, was to make sure that our radio stations were in fact visible as part of the app menu on these ecosystems. So let's take a look at how they look. And on the left, we have Apple CarPlay. On the right, we have Android Auto. And again, we're still only looking at 12% and 10% respectively of those who ever spend time in a car. But you can see where we're headed here. Each of them is in fact going up. Here's how they feel about Apple CarPlay. Generally very, very positive, right? About a third say they love it and use it all the time. So that definitely puts pressure on radio. But there's some other people who have struggled with it as well. It is not the perfect interface, but again, a third love it. Now, there's not as much passion for Android Auto. And probably part of the reason for that is that with Apple, the iOS system is consistent across all their various handsets. But if you know Android phones, you know they can vary rather dramatically by brand and by price. And so some people probably are not having a particularly great experience with their Android phones, but still, more than a fifth say they absolutely love it. And in fact, these ecosystems are being marketed by a number of the automakers. If you watch TV commercials for new cars, more often than not, they are highlighting the fact that they have Apple CarPlay more often than not. And in fact, both of these ecosystems are beginning to have an impact on the purchasing or leasing decision. What model am I going to get? That's what we're looking at here. CarPlay is on the left, Android Auto is on the right. And the question is, how many people say it's very important that their next vehicle have these ecosystems? And you can see in the case of Apple CarPlay, it's up to 18%, not too shabby. So this is why it is critically important in the mobile app developing universe that we're not just talking about apps that are available on smartphones and tablets, but they've got to show up in dashboards in order to be effective. So let's jump into some takeaways here, and Bob's going to rejoin the conversation here and walk us through what all of this means, because data is great, but how does it actually translate to the mobile experience? So Bob, you want to walk us through it?
Sure. Thanks a lot, Fred. That was a really great walkthrough of really where people are at and how they're using media and radio in particular. And so I wanted to just kind of pull a few points out to really make it sort of all come home. One of the things is no two radio stations are the same. And so your app should be as unique as your station. To give your audience a really great app experience, you need to be more than a stream. You need an app to present your brand, all the content, and an outstanding customer experience. Here you can see 4 different stations. These were all built by jacapps. These are all on the same platform, and yet each one is unique and is really tailored to the needs of that particular station. And if we go to the next one, The best way, to really have that experience is to have your own branded app. Here are 3 more stations on our platform. Again, all unique, each tailored to the individual station. So the one on the far left there, you can see with the menu slid out, they've got all kinds of different content opportunities within their app that their users can get to. The one in the center there, that's a news feed underneath the player. So this is Michigan Radio. They're an NPR station here in Michigan, and they have a really active news feed that provides really great state and local information. On the right there, KPBS in San Diego, they are all about their podcasts. And so what you're seeing there is a listing of all of the podcasts that they have available. Now, to contrast that, if we take a look at the TuneIn app here, if I come to TuneIn as a user and I want to find your radio station, it's not immediately obvious where I am. So if you come in, this is the main screen. First, I have to decide what I want. Do I want local radio, music, whatever? So if I choose local radio, the next thing that I see is a whole list of cities, and I assume all the stations there. One sort of irony here, we took this screenshot here in Michigan where our offices are, and yet all the towns you see there are in Ohio. So you can see it's not easy to find what you're looking for. And then once you do get to a list of stations, you can see you're really in there with everybody, and that includes your competitors. And there's not really a lot of room for your own identification there. So if I choose the Super Q there, now I go to finally the place in the app where I can listen to the station. Now right now you see a big Super Q logo in the middle of the screen there, but the minute I hit play, that's going to turn into album art. And the only branding left for your station is that little tiny text at the top there. And the other thing you'll notice is not here is there is no news feed. There are no podcasts. Those aren't here as well. And so your brand really can kind of get lost, in this space. So, in this case, best case scenario, it took me 4 taps to get to the station I want. So it's another argument for why having your own app is a really, really good idea. And so the other thing, once you have that app, and as Fred indicated earlier, this is a ongoing issue that we talk to our clients about a lot, and that is you've got to really have great promotion. You've got to let your audience know all the places that they can find you. You have to have regular, consistent, ongoing promotion of your app and all the channels, through all the channels you have, whether it's on your air, on your website, anywhere you market your radio station. And if you recall back looking at the survey, 40% plus or minus of people had no idea that their favorite station had an app or a skill. So that's really, really important. And as people are looking for your content in these different places, you really have to be everywhere. And I think that's a really important piece here, is you've got to be prepared to be everywhere that they are. This is a great example from one of our client stations where they're really telling you in no uncertain terms, we're on the web, we're on a mobile app, we're on a tablet, and you can see the Amazon Alexa and Google Home icons there as well. It's really important to really make sure that everybody knows where they can engage with you. And it being summer now, people are really, you really want to make sure that people are prepared to take you with them on their vacations. If you take a look at Fred's blog from today, some recent research shows that the classic car trip is making a big comeback this summer. And so your mobile app should make it easy to go along. And that's why Fred was talking about Android Auto and Apple CarPlay and how important it is that your app just show up right there. And it's important for you to remind your listeners of this by, changing your promos accordingly. We're hearing a lot of stations now are including things like their Alexa invocation and their app in their top of the hour IDs. One station we work with, Michigan Radio, around these parts this time of year, people go up north. And they did a whole campaign about take Michigan Radio up north with you. And it was really, really a great way to get people engaged in your station. Another way to really get your listeners engaged with your station is to use push messaging. this is your most direct communication channel to activate your audience. These notifications you see here are all clickable, so people can click right through and get into, find out more from you, and you can really get the message front and center with them. And as Fred mentioned also, over 50% of listeners are open to hearing from you this way. And what we find is so long as you don't abuse them by sending too many messages, they like it and they're happy to hear from you. So of course, the car is still, the #1 place that people listen, and that's why CarPlay and Android Auto are so important. But the other thing that we really have to keep in mind is there's a whole group of consumers out there now who may never go back to the office again. So for these work from home folks, it's really important that you are in their home and on whatever device they happen to be listening on. So if they're just laying on their couch, you want to make sure that if you're coming through their mobile device or you're coming through their smart speaker, it is really, really crucial. But as we know, the future is not easy to see right now. So we really want to be there to help you prepare for that future. And so what we're trying to do now is to make this as easy as possible for you to get an app, to get a skill. Is we're going to make a limited time offer right now where if you buy an app from us through July 17th, we're going to give you a nice discount on the app itself, about 20 to 25% off that station app. And that's going to include connected car because we want you to be there too. Plus, we're going to give you a basic Alexa skill for no upfront cost. So we really want to get you on all of these different platforms. And if you have multiple stations, we can do even more discounting for you. So if you're interested, if you think that it's time for you to take your digital game up a notch or two, please get in contact with Ceres Allison. She's our Director of Business Development, a radio veteran. She understands your problems and knows how to solve them. Her contact info is right here on the screen. And so we really hope you'll reach out, and we're always happy to talk to you about how we can help make your digital presence stronger. So please reach out to us. So thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions at this point, please, we'll keep the webinar open for another few minutes. Put them in the question box and we will answer each one individually via email after the webinar. So yeah, have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Bob. We'd be more than happy to get back with you. And again, I think this summertime period is going to be critically important for us. I mean, this is the moment where hopefully we're taking a bit of a breather with COVID-19. I mean, there's a lot of dire predictions about where we're going to be in the fall, and hopefully it'll be okay. But this is the moment now to bolster your at-home strategy, your in-car strategy, and make sure that people can listen to your radio station on all of these platforms and all of these devices. So we appreciate you being here today. We know everybody's busy and working remotely yourselves and stressed out. So thank you for being here. We appreciate it. If you guys have any questions at all, shoot us an email and we'll be more than happy to get back with you. Thanks for being here and have a great day and be safe.